The following is an original audio series from Sierra International Machinery, Pile of Scrap, with your host, John Sacco.
Well, we're going to do probably one of the most special episodes of Pile of Scrap. Here with my nephew, Little Phil. Sorry for the little. You're 32 years old.
Don't say sorry. I've always been Little Phil.
You will always be Little Phil. I'm here with Stan Silva Jr.
Yep.
Buddy to me.
Yep.
All my life, you've been buddy.
Right. A couple of years.
And Stan Silva the third, but little bud. The difference between you, buddy, and Philip, you're fourth generation.
Yep.
Little Phil, you're third generation at Sierra. My dad and Bud, your dad. How did they become friends? How did they get to know each other? Where did that start? Was it Terry Glukoff that introduced?
Yes. Yeah, Terry Glukoff. Because that's when we were looking at doing portable work. And so that's what really started this whole thing. And
well, you guys, the Silva family in Sierra, you're the number 2 customer at Sierra. When it got all said and done, and it was because of Terry Glukoff, because he was at Judson Steel buying bundles, and we bought the 4200, the first one. And everybody said to my dad, "You're crazy buying a foreign baler. You're not going to get parts. You're not going to get et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." Well, it was killing it on production. He calls Terry Glukoff, says, "You got to see this baler I got. I'm making number 2 bills." So Terry comes down and he looks at the baler and says, "My brother needs one of these." So the very first baler that came to Sierra, the 4200, ended up at S&G, which was Steve Glukoff.
on Hyatt Street.
And you knew where.
I might have went there once or twice.
And then from there, something happened, and it ended up at an A&S Metals, but it is an A&S that you are in Oregon. And then you guys came down. But how did that, were you part of that? Did you come down with your dad? Or
no.
Your dad just came home one day and said?
With Terry. Met them, Terry and Dad went down to Bakersfield and met with your dad.
See, I wasn't part of that.
I wasn't either. Because you were in school at that time.
I was finishing up USC,
right?
my senior year at USC when that all went down.
And I was just being a dumb truck driver.
A dumb truck driver. All right, well, that segues right in. Because the question I was contemplating, when did you know you wanted to be a scrap man? You looked at me. I always wanted to be a trucker.
The first time I remember sitting in a truck is Dad was driving an old international transfer. And it was an old bubble nose transfer, and I was sitting in a big wide seat, and I bet you I was probably 4 years old. I knew if I rode with Dad in the truck, I was spending time with Dad, And so as I spent more time with Dad, I obviously enjoyed parts of going places.
Well, going places. Where was he going? Was he hauling scrap, or what was he doing?
Well, back in those days, he was hauling gravel as a part-time job, and he was hauling logs. He was he drove an old 58 Peterbilt, hauling wood chips up to Antioch through the old Vasco grade and the old school roads that I vaguely remember.
Where does scrap come into this? When does the metals come into this?
Well, my grandfather back in the late 60s was a scale master.
Grandpa George worked the scale at the landfill.
Yep.
Sees all the scrap metal going in, and he's thinking, "Aha, this isn't right."
So they got together. My grandfather and my dad got hooked up with my grandma's 2 brothers, the Ash, Edward and James Ash, who were well drillers and loggers. Who my dad was a logger back in the day. He logged. Actually, he had a limb go through his chest and almost killed him when I was in my mom's womb. Right after my mom found out she was pregnant with me, my dad had a limb go through his chest.
She was trying to kill him, I think.
No. Yeah, no, not at that time, maybe, but as Dad was doing, 10 different jobs every day.
20 hours a day of work every day.
So they developed this co-op between, the 2 uncles and my dad and my grandfather, which started A&S Metals. My first job at A&S when I was real little was they would get a back of a pickup bed, put all the copper in the back of it, burn it, and then you'd have to go in there and cut all the ends off, and that was my job.
How old were you when you were cutting off the ends of that copper wire?
I was about 8 years old.
Did your dad ever make you do that?
No, I tried to stay on equipment. I got smart quick. I didn't want to do the manual
Well,
labor.
you were lucky.
He was spoiled. Not
Well,
smart.
yeah, but you know what? He got on equipment
Really young. I mean,
I said this earlier today, guys. The only piece of equipment I was ever allowed to run at Sierra as a kid growing up was the upstroke baler. And that was for baling bags.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't even for the metal room.
see, that's just so funny to me because my grandpa.
You got to do the excavators with the shear, run the big shears in there.
At 7 years old, I was running the stick shear.
Let's fast forward to today. I got to drive a semi truck for the very first time in my entire life. I'm 58 years old. You guys, you told me a story. You were how old when you drove your first truck?
Well, I was in that same truck going across the Montana-Utah border with a step
How old?
deck. 12. I shouldn't say that on camera. But
And how old were you when you soloed your first semi?
I'm about 12 years old.
Think about it, because that's our youth, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
And then these kids had a different set of youth. But how about your father, grandfather, my father? I mean, that was the Wild West almost for modern day, post World War II. And, you two guys are the bloodline of hardworking people, grandfathers.
absolutely.
Okay?
And it's far in
Both
between.
your grandfather and Buddy, your grandfather, work is what they loved. Work is what they knew. But it was work and family. There was no
work was their retirement life. I mean, that's what they wanted to do when they retired, is they wanted to work.
What I know about you, bud, and your family, and just how you are, and I think about my grandpa a lot. At 86 years old, he was still in the office 5-6 days a week.
Oh, I know.
He'd go get chemo, and then he'd be in the office.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was the work ethic, and because that also their brains worked in a way that, they didn't have the hobbies we have. Okay. Now your dad was a hunter.
Yeah, I mean, you could color him gone. You can color him gone in October. He'd go hunting, but
All year long. All year long.
But that's a hunter is a funny thing because they work all year to go hunting too. It's kind of like their reward.
right?
It's not like a vacation on the beach in Hawaii to them. It's because hunting's work. Now you're a hunter. You're a big time. Are you a hunter, bud?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
So, interesting thing. Let's get back to this A&S thing because there's something that I found fascinating today. You guys had a little MRF here in Castroville, and so did Waste Management.
Yeah.
Neither of you guys have a MRF anymore. What happened?
Several different ways or reasons. We got out of it because the market for plastic was gone, and we just kept fighting it and losing money. So we jumped out, and then when we jumped out, around our area, they put a new MRF in. Probably about a year and a half, 2 years later, here locally. And then that's when Waste Management got out because they wasn't able to fulfill that contract anymore. But fortunately, we got out, and then they have all these residual, all the plastics that they need to take out of the environment. So they weigh it in as a recyclable, and then there's no money to redeem that. So they're taking it back to the face and then burying it. So it's a big facade. We're doing right over here, but in the left, they're not saying what
Behind the
they're,
scenes.
yeah.
When the government gets involved with business, profit is thrown out because they just rely on extra money in the budget from more taxes. And yet they're still
Budgets.
not fulfilling the real, true, duty of recycling. Is getting it out of it because there is so little money involved with certain products in the recycling stream. So the household's really going to have to pay for it.
Absolutely. So the more green we are, the more expensive it takes for our homeowners to pay, because it's being ran by government that they just put a budget to it.
And I think when all these governments, municipalities and counties, whatever, what have you, are doing these MRFs and they're losing their butts on them because of the cost, that's when they come up with the regulators come up with these nefarious plans that lump in a commodity like scrap metal, copper, aluminum, and stainless, cardboard. These are commodities. These are commodities that are consumed here in the U.S. to make all the new product, new packaging, new, trucks out of steel and aluminum for motor blocks and copper for all the electrical. Hell, you can't build a ventilator for COVID-19 patients without recyclable products in it.
Absolutely.
You need cardboard for the packaging. You need a copper for the wiring to turn it on. You got a little aluminum part. You got plastic, steel stand in it. It's all from a recycled product. But they want to lump that product, that's a commodity, and they want to call it waste. Because as soon as they call it waste, they own it.
Yeah.
And we no longer get to control that commodity.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I think we all have to stand up against, because we are not a waste. Our industry is not waste handling, because we don't handle waste. We handle a commodity or commodity processing.
Yep.
Really, you look at the root of it, they're raw resources.
Right.
Well, yes, we are the raw materials for, raw materials for critical manufacturing. And that's why during COVID, our industry got to stay open.
Right.
Okay, critical manufacturing.
Essential.
Yeah.
We are essential because without our materials, Jason Young from the Allen Company told me that without recycled cardboard, and if they closed every recycling center because they deemed us non-essential, paper mills would run out of paper in 2 weeks.
Really?
2 weeks.
Yep.
Food packaging was less than a month. You won't even be able to distribute food anymore.
Yeah,
Crazy.
So, it's it needs to be said. And part of our efforts, and look, let's face it, but we always seem to be battling the government in respect to the regulatory burden placed on us, and it's getting harder and harder and harder. But the government knows all their little MRFs, they lose their ass. They don't know how to recycle for profit, and they're not going to handle commodities in a profitable way. Well, heck no. Can you imagine them trying to run our businesses? Now, you're talking about institutional knowledge that stems from your grandfather, my father, our fathers, to your grandfathers, that's been passed down. This is generations of knowledge being passed down, how to do things and how to do things right. And I think that's vitally important. And that's why our industry always seems to improve, because of the next generation has learned from their forefathers, and now they're improving. I got a question for both Little Phil and Little Bud here. Tell us something, the one memory of Grandpa is the first memory you always think of. Little Bud, you go first.
God damn it, stupid.
I can hear that. I can hear it.
So I think of my grandpa now that you said that, and I think now I just shifted my gears. When he was mad, he'd go, "You imbecile!"
Well, his favorite saying is when he would get upset at somebody who he didn't agree with or something. He would say to him, and he'd always have a cigarette in his mouth. He'd take a drag, and then he'd go, you remind me of a good friend of mine that's an imbecile.
Yep. The thing that comes to mind first when I think of my grandpa is all the years growing up. I mean, from little kid that in today's world, you couldn't even have a kid that young, even in the yard, probably. But just walking around and him teaching me about the piles and different non-ferrouses and, different grades and how to blend to make an 80-20, 70-30 mix, and just like all the years when it was just walks with Grandpa through the scrapyard and looking at equipment, the whole time he was grooming you and teaching you. And I didn't realize that until really, unfortunately, after he had passed away and I had come back from college and, full time in the company now.
Well, the one memory I have of your grandfather and your dad, I mean, there are a lot of memories, but I was always thankful he liked me because he scared the hell out of me because he was the most burly dude. When you shake his hand, you had to be prepared. But he was a sweetheart of a man.
Big old teddy bear, man.
But boy, oh boy,
Big old teddy bear.
when he went to shake your hand, you better be ready because you were going to get a good old fashioned. Not because he tried, but you were going to get a good old fashioned knuckle cruncher just because
You didn't realize the strength he had.
Oh, he had amazing strength, but he was. You just looked at your grandfather and just hard work. That was it. Just hard work. He just screamed like a billboard.
His whole life.
I work hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, this is and we're blessed. Look, guys, we sit here today at this table because of that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because of that dedication, that hard work, their honesty, their integrity, and their character sits us at this table to be able to tell this story. That's the blessings
And
we all have.
all the opportunities, that, and, I'd see that today is all the opportunities that my dad gave me, and he would do without to make sure that I was doing it, or he would put the time in. And, as I was growing up in my teens and 20s, he would stay working for me while I was out, he would let me go ahead and go do this, and I see that right now.
Go team open.
Yeah. He has a different, different desire that he's doing now than I was doing in my younger years. But, and it's things that it's things that, that Dad did for me and my three sisters and my mom, and where he created our legacy and the hard work, and having, a dedication. He was more dedicated and more determined than any person that he had ever known. Determined would be
describe him the best.
Yeah.
Determined.
Never say no.
Yeah, I think the word for my dad was fearless.
Yeah.
As an immigrant to the country, broke after World War II. I mean, you're in World War II, you're prepared to die at any moment, right? Not that you're prepared, but, so he was always fearless. This is only part of our day. This is part of our podcast that's going to end. And I want to thank you, Buddy Jr. the third, actually, for Buddy Jr. the third. There you go.
Yeah,
And what a name that is.
Yeah.
For joining us at lunch.
Well, thanks for having us.
Well, it was no way we could sit here without you. No way we could sit here without you, Phil. And of course,
Good old friends.
my brother.
Yeah.
Love you, man.
Ditto.
Thank you so much for all this.
Yeah.
And you know what?
There's one thing too you brought up is one thing about our parents that nobody knows about that you said that.
Yeah,
we didn't get a
right.
chance to say. One thing about him is I've never seen or met another person that takes better care of their employees, that treats them like family. I mean, if you work for us, you're part of the family.
All right. And this has been another episode of Pile of Scrap.
This has been a Sierra International Machinery original audio series. Thanks for listening. Please share this podcast and make sure to subscribe.